Hi, I'm Bridie Monaghan from The Independent, and as part of our partnership with Latitude Festival, I am joined today by poet, artist and playwright Inua Ellams.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi,
How are you
Bridie.
doing?
I'm good, thank you. Is your name Monaghan?
Monaghan, yeah.
Does that mean you're Irish?
It does mean I have Irish heritage, yes. Irish and Welsh, bizarrely.
Irish and Welsh.
Yeah.
Is Bridie a Welsh name?
No, it's an Irish name as well. Yeah.
Is it short for something?
So I believe it originates from a pet name for Bridget.
Okay.
Yeah, because you grew up in Ireland.
I lived in Ireland for 3 years, yeah.
3 years. What part of Ireland?
Bridie Monaghan. I like it.
Thank you. Thanks. I like it too.
Yeah, it's sort of, I was going to say unusual, but that is a sort of geopolitical system, well, not political, but you know what I mean? It's geospecific depending on where you are. I imagine in Ireland it wouldn't stand out so much.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yes, I was once told that someone didn't think that I was actually Irish because nobody below the age of 80 is called Bridie in Ireland, apparently. So I have an old lady name. But it's lovely to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. I have heard so many rave reviews about Search Party, and I'm really excited to see it at Latitude Festival this year. You allow the audience to pick words, and then you kind of curate the show around those words that they choose. I'm dying to know, what's the number? How many poems are on that iPad?
Oh, wow. Today, I tried to switch to a new app to do the show with. And, I don't know, 500-600 minimum.
Wow.
Probably. And then I have bits of poems. So including that would be into the 1500s. And then shreds of lots of things. Yeah. So there's a large pool from which the Search Party show sort of unfolds.
Amazing. Yeah. And you've said before that the idea for the show kind of sparked at Latitude Festival. How does it feel bringing it to Latitude 16 years since your first performance?
A little surreal, a little nerve-wracking. But because it's Latitude and because I know the warm, welcoming environment I'm walking into, it'll be fine. Yeah, and that's exactly the environment that sparked the idea anyway. So I'm not super nervous about it. Yeah.
And why did you kind of want to create this fluid performance style?
Fundamentally, I believe in democracy. That's probably it at the very baseline. I grew up in a household of 3 sisters. I was the only male child. And because we believed in democracy, not a patriarchy, I never dictated the kind of games we'd play. So I just grew up playing games my sisters played, which meant playing with dolls and sewing Barbie dresses and little things like that. But it got to show me aspects of myself, aspects of the person I could be, the boy, the man I could be, because they would never, diminish me or make fun of me for being what is stereotypically described as feminine, as having feminine qualities, because they were feminine. But also, the most hardcore, relentless, vicious fighter I knew was my twin sister. So one could say she was displaying masculine qualities, but such binary didn't exist in my household. So because of just living in this democratic sort of egalitarian space, I tried to figure out over and over again how to bring that into my work. And Search Party was just one simple way of doing that, which solved various problems for me. Essentially, if I have a terrible day and it's hard and difficult and I'm supposed to read poems or text to an audience that night, I find myself trying to choose poems that reflect my mood, or trying to choose poems that are the antithesis of my mood. Either way, that felt too much like a construction of a performance. It felt like I was removing myself, my emotions, my present being, consciousness, and concerns from the interaction with the audience. So I just wanted to change that a little bit So instead, I've developed this way where the audience shout out words. I look for text that contain their words and read it back to them. Then from that, try and pull a theme from that first poem and stretch it out across everything else I read to sort of guide the selection. So it's very back and forth. It's very interactive. I have no way where we're going. Sometimes I find myself reading poems I haven't seen in 5-6 years. Sometimes a poem that I wrote 20 years ago and is terrible and there are too many metaphors. It doesn't really make sense. But that is the shape. That is the contract I make with the audience. So I fulfill that.
I imagine kind of finding those poems again that you wrote years ago or maybe haven't been finished. I imagine it's actually quite a good writing or rewriting process. Are there any particular poems that you like you said you didn't like back then but you like now and you've worked on?
Yeah, well, I also have this fundamental belief that once a poem is published, once it's in the public sphere, it belongs to the public and you can't really mess around with it anymore. So I rarely go back and tweak anything too drastically, regardless of how bad it is. It's done, it's done. Also, understanding how bad a writer I was before and how better I believe I'm becoming shows a track record and a progression of thought, and I can see my intellectual evolution through the journey of this poem. So I try not to move around it too much. But one of my earliest poems is a sonnet, which I tried to write in the style and form of Shakespeare. And I remember calling it Sonnet 115, even though it was my very first sonnet, to pretend I'd written 115 other sonnets. But yeah, that's still buried in the dusty corners of my iPad.
Oh, I wish more people had that kind of view of art and working on your art instead of having this, like, I don't know, feeling of latching on to failure and not wanting to see those things. I think it's like a really good way of showing your progress. That's so cool.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we are constantly evolving as human beings. What we are today is not who we are yesterday or who we'll be tomorrow, and just marking that progression, I think, is what it really means to be human. Because of social media, because of the pressures to have this veneer, this ideal of perfection, we're cutting ourselves off from what it means to be human, which fundamentally is to be imperfect, is to grow old, to evolve.
What has been your most memorable experience of being at Latitude Festival before?
Oh man, I'm still trying to figure out how to write a poem about this. I'm gonna have to crack it this year because I'm working on a new book. But it was one early, freezing morning. I stepped out of my tent, went to find a loo or something to use. I came back, there was dew and fog across the campground, and this lady was walking by dressed in this very tattered shawl, which was rainbow colored. And she was cradling a baby, and her hair was wild and blonde and dirty and twisted, and she had this voice that sounded husky, like smoke and water. And then she had seen me read poems somewhere the night before and just told me she really liked my performance, and she'd been reading some lines to her baby. And then she said we had that brief interaction, the sun rose, and then she disappeared into the mist again. I'm not entirely sure if this happened because of just how zany and ridiculous it seems. It feels a memory, a revelry. But yeah, that's one thing. I've been trying to write a poem. It's one of those crystallizing moments where you question your worth as a poet, or why you're doing this, or who cares, or all of those things, and then someone just appears and confirms your concerns, your attempts to pin something down on a piece of paper, and then vanishes again. And for me, that is what it is to share a poem. It's to attempt to pin something down on paper, read it, perhaps share it, and then that moment vanishes as well.
That is beautiful. I will find you at the festival. I'll come and watch the show, and I'll be expecting and waiting for that poem.
Okay.
Do you have any kind of backstage rituals before you perform?
Yeah. when I was performing at the National Theatre, I met this vocal coach called Jeanette Wilson, and she gave me this sheet of paper of just vocal warm-up and exercises. This is going back 15 years. And every time before I step on stage, I use it. So just very simple breathing exercises. And after that, there's this prayer, which one of my favorite poets called Saul Williams wrote in one of his poems. Saul Williams also played the preacher in Ryan Coogler's Sinners. He was the father of the son of the boy who sings throughout that incredible film. So Saul Williams is also an actor, but an incredible poet. And he has this poem which contains this prayer. And the prayer is this, dear God, grant me wings. I'm to fly, not to fly. And I like it because it's humble, but at the same time braggadocious. And there's a double entendre, there's a play on words. It speaks, it's built on African-American vernacular. I'm to fly, but not to fly. And that just reminds me of Icarus. So there's something mythic, but grounded and simple and humble about it, which is just typical of Saul Williams's work and philosophy as an artist. So yeah, those are things I always say or do before I step on stage.
As an audience member at festivals, do you have like a particular favourite festival performance you've seen?
Yeah, I think it was at Glastonbury. I think a band performing, I think they were called Lamb.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of them?
It rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being tired. I remember not wanting to leave my tent. I just wanted to lie down. I was, up to my neck in mud. I was done. My friend said, let's go see Lamb. And I said, who the hell is Lamb? I don't know them. They said, oh, just come, fine. So whatever. So they pulled me through these waves, these tsunamis of people. And I arrived, and it's dark. And Lamb come on stage, and I don't know this band. They start singing, and something comes over me. I don't know what. And I'm singing line for line for line. And I to this day, I don't even remember the song. I don't remember whatever, but for that hour and a half, I was completely hypnotized. Something unexplained took me. Yeah.
Real unexpected moment as well.
Yeah, yeah, very, very.
Always at Glastonbury. Your hugely successful play, The Barbershop Chronicles, spoke to so many people and made a huge global impact, not just from its performances at the National Theatre, but internationally on tour, and then when it was streamed during COVID as well. For those who haven't seen it, just maybe briefly talk us through the premise.
It's very simple. It's a play set on one day, but in 6 different locations. 5 of those locations are on the African continent, in Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Uganda, and Ghana. And the 6th location is here in England. And in all the capital cities of these countries, there are men in barbershops, and they're all gearing up to watch the same football match. It's a network of barbers and clients who know each other but don't know that they know each other. So for instance, a client works into the barbershop in London and talks about a long-lost brother he hasn't seen. We switch to Ghana, and that brother walks into the shop and talks about a friend in London who's a businessman. We come back to London, and that businessman walks into the shop. So it's this network of barbers and clients who don't know each other, but they're all living through similar themes, discussing fatherhood and belonging. Yeah.
And you recorded, as part of your research, lots of conversations in barbershops from Africa and in London as well. What was the conversations that surprised you the most, or your favourite?
The most ridiculous, which didn't make it into the play, partly because of how outlandish it was a conversation in Kenya about which witchcraft is better, Kenyan or Nigerian. And it was ridiculous because the sort of rivalry between East and West Africans was just spilling out. The conversations were getting more and more outlandish. the cultures of dating and relationships were so crazy. My friend describes dating in Kenya as one large orgy, you know. And arguably Nigeria is similar, except there are no cameras. But it was just a ridiculous conversation. But some of the more conversations were guided and seemed to be in theme with where I was on those journeys. So 6 weeks I traveled on my own. And when I arrived in Ghana, I was staying with a friend and his family. And this meant, because of the power dynamics, that I suddenly became no longer a bachelor traveling on his own, but an uncle in this domestic setting. So when I went to the barber shop, conversations there were all about familial responsibility, about fatherhood, and maybe it's because I was looking after his kids that the questions that arose around me were also about that. I can't quite put my finger on it, but the conversations were really, really tender in Ghana, which was in stark contrast to Nigerians, which I am, and we're all loud and braggadocious and blah, blah, blah. So understanding actually the national identities by sitting in barbershop and seeing the conversations that came forth was really, really interesting. They were varied, but when I was trying to make the play, I set myself sort of a formula for deciding what was most important, what to bring out. And essentially, if the same subject came out 3 times in the play, across all conversations, I'd make sure that I'd leave it in the play, which meant that some things just naturally filtered out. But the conversations were all largely about legacy, about fatherhood, about migration, about belonging, about secrets, about truth. Yeah.
So interesting to hear how it kind of shaped your writing there. What's kind of been your favourite interaction with audiences afterwards? Like, have you had any feedback after the play that you've particularly held on to?
It's been a few years now since it was last on British stages. It was in France, in Belgium, and this year it begins a second tour in the Francophone world. 60 dates, I think, starting in Belgium again. And I think though the Francophone world and the Anglophone African world are different, there are very strong cultural similarities. Many of these countries are in the wake of colonization, which means they are searching for their identities in both parts of the world, and then the conversations are very, very similar. And the anger, the frustrations are also very, very similar. And I think the differences aren't too stark at all, because fundamentally we are all the same. And I say this because even at the end of the play, the joke that the barber tells to his client begins, there's a Scottish man, an Irishman, and an Englishman. And the parallels, the joke I went on to write, which never made it into the play, follows the same trifecta of differences, of slight brotherly friction which exists between Nigerians and South Africans and Ugandans, etc. So just finding a lot of those things, it's one of the reasons why I think the play has universal appeal. And there's a part of me that wants to write a version that is set in the Spanish-speaking world, that's set in the Arabic-speaking world. They're just, yeah.
Lots of new versions to come.
Lots of new versions to come, yeah.
How did it feel to, get that opportunity to have it on at the National Theatre and tour it internationally? What was it like being given such a huge platform?
To be honest, I didn't think about that at the time. Mm-hmm. I just focused on trying to serve the actors in the room, the directors in the room, and the other creative team, the lighting designer, the set designer, the accent coach, the music, I'm trying to make sure we all knew the story we were telling collectively, and that the success would be the collaboration. the true collaboration would be the success of the play, regardless of what happens, regardless of the venue. And we're playing in the smallest theater, the National Theater anyway. So it felt as if, okay, the stakes are really low here. Let's just do the show. And the very first night, the show was 15 minutes longer than it should have been. So I was, nervous as hell, looking at the time, thinking, oh my God, why are they speaking so slowly? And then it got to the last line, and the audience erupted in this overflowing of emotion and applause. And backstage, we were all just confused because we didn't know what we had done. We just knew we were trying to tell something that we believed in, but we didn't know if the audience would believe in what we believed in. So we were shocked. That's what we was that first night. We were just, oh, well, okay. What, and then the second night we did it, and then there's usually the second night curse where it's terrible, but it was also a brilliant reaction. And the third night, the same thing. Then we began to understand, based on the feedback, what the play was doing, and then we began to relax a little bit, and then the play got bloated again, and the director came back and said, "No, you guys are you're enjoying yourself too much. Come back." At the time, we didn't know. We were just trying to honor each other. Yeah.
And you also wrote a great episode of Doctor Who.
Thank you.
My goodness. Set in a barbershop in Nigeria. What did it mean to put Nigeria at the centre of such an iconic British sci-fi institution?
I mean, I still can't believe that I did that. Because I grew up watching Doctor Who as a kid in Nigeria, in Lagos, 9 years old, terrified at Daleks and everything, just quivering behind the sofa, addicted. So that was one thing. And then coming to the UK, when I started going to the gym, this is going way back, when I don't really go to the gym anymore, but I would sit down and I'd be tweeting conversations between me and the dumbbells as tiny poems on Twitter, back when Twitter was fun. And then on a whim, I started tweeting on an episode of Doctor Who in Nigeria, just early morning between sets, tweeting. And even then I thought, okay, fine, this is just for fun. And then years later, when I reached out to Russell T. Davies and invited me to come and speak to him, again, I couldn't believe this was happening. I thought, okay, even just to be in the room with him is fine, cool. And then things began to progress. Then I remember the first time I was on set, I walked on and I couldn't do. I think the word that best describes it is blasphemy. It felt like God had given me the keys to his workshop and said, "Go, what do you want to make? Let's do it." It just I'd peeked behind the veil, and they'd given me the needles and the thread and said, "Stitch your own, add to it." It's ridiculous. Not only to have done that, but to have created an episode which is set in the Inua Ellams cinematic universe, which my episode is. My episode is more or less a prequel to Barbershop Chronicles. And also, the fact that I had a cameo in my episode means that I am now Doctor Who canon, which is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and Stan Lee credits Anansi, who is this West African folk figure, as being the first ever Spider-Man, and Anansi is the sort of godfather that they're chasing. So I was riffing on three myths in that episode: the myth of Who, the myth of Anansi, and then the myth of the Doctor of Barbershop Chronicles as well. Just weaving in this, I don't think anyone really myself and my script editors and Russell T. Davies, we know what we've done. I think people just get bits and pieces. It all works perfectly in a story. My script editor has made sure of that. But boy, I'm speechless when I think about what I got to do.
It's a great cameo as well. I loved seeing you pop up. I was like, look, he's got his moment as well. I love that for him.
Thank you.
You your already award-winning play.
So we're going to have to wrap it up as well.
Yeah, no worries.
This is the
I'll
final questions.
Okay. Your already award-winning play, Once Upon a Time in Sokoto, is due to premiere later this year. What can audiences expect?
If I've done my job correctly, they should expect to be entertained. They should expect to be moved. They should expect to laugh. They should expect to see an Africa, a Nigeria they've never experienced on British stages, and characters they could only dream of meeting. It's a part of British history, as it is a part of Nigerian history. It's a period drama about the fall of an empire and the rise of another, with these two incredible women at the heart of the story. It should be quite a journey, but I'm trying to tell it very simply. I don't need pyrotechnics. I just want to tell the story and make sure there's nothing between the characters and the audience. That sense of democratic sharing, I'm trying to bring it in. But I think you should expect to be entertained. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Latitude Festival. Thank you so much for joining us here today as well.
Thanks for having me.
You can catch Inua at the Listening Post at Latitude Festival, which runs from the 23rd to the 26th of July.